we're going to focus on CGC and CBCS for these purposes, but we're happy to talk about any other companies.
Do you,
Yeah, so sometimes you don't get notes on the modern tier. My understanding is you're not guaranteed any grading notes. Like you might not get any grading notes in the modern tier. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, someone mentioned in the comments that CBCS does have the QR code, so you can scan that and it'll pull up the graders notes, which has gotten a lot of positive feedback, which is great. Because I've definitely been there where I'm squinting on the computer trying to see the serial number that I could type in. Not that I could see the QR code when I'm doing it either, but it is cool to just quickly snap that at a show or something like that.
Okay, overview is done. I think we kind of threw some ideas out there. Now, either chat or any of you guys on the screen, who got some questions or things that they want to talk through about grading, comic grading? I mean, does anyone have questions in chat or here on the screen? Let's open it up.
I had one for you guys. Because I'm just a personal collector. I don't grade books for resale. I'm fascinated by the really big books, right? The ASM 300s, UF4s, Hulk 181s, where there's like 5 figures on the census. There's 20,000, 30,000. Do you think those books get graded harder because those people have just seen hundreds of copies of ASM 300 and it's just harder to impress them because they've seen, I think it's 30,000 at CGC? And I can't imagine there's probably like 10,000 at CBCS. Like, do you think it's harder on those really prolific, really populous books on the census to get the big grades?
I know that ASM 300, I feel like, is notoriously kind of hard to 9.8. Like if you find a 9.8 newsstand in that book, it's kind of like, find a needle in a haystack. There aren't many. I don't know when the last sale was that I on GPA. But yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot of UF4s out there, but that's like what Frank was saying. That's a modern. So I imagine you don't send that book unless it's been pressed too, because it was in the poly bag. So I feel like everyone who's
I don't know. There's a lot of 8.5s on the census.
yeah. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of, I think there's over 3,000 9.8s of that one. In the census, but yeah, it's kind of one of those questions that's like, to me, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and you don't know. I don't know what goes on in there, and it's really curious. Speaking of totally same subject, do you know anyone that's applied to the academy, the CGC Academy that they're doing that? Did you hear about that, Ali?
Yeah, I heard about it. Didn't quit my day job, but I heard about it.
I know. I think it's cool.
My understanding, Sunil, is that like their graders make a little bit more than $10 an hour, right? I'm just telling you. I don't think they make $10 an hour. But anyways, on that note about the ASM 300, I do think it gets graded harder in practice because again, these are human beings, right? Like grading. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they do it intentionally. I don't think they do, but they've seen so many of them. Their eyes, they're trained. Like they know, hey, that book. Look, you look along the spine. Obviously, it's a black cover. Turn it over. Look at the back cover on that book because that's where you're gonna find the color breaks. And they already know where they know where to look because they have a lot of experience with that particular book, and so. It's going to be really hard to catch them not checking the right places on a book like that they see all the time. So
someone in the chat had a question about they said they had a Hawkman 4 that they give a 6.0 or higher to, but it has a detached centerfold. How big of a hit do you think that would be? I've seen CGC slabs that's a detached centerfold that have been 7.0s. There's obviously going to be other defects there, but I do believe if you really truly believe it's a 6.0 and it has a detached centerfold, I think if I've seen a 7.0 with a detached centerfold notation, that it should be not a detached cover, a centerfold.
What
Is it
age was
is
that
it a
book?
6.0? Is it a 6.0 if the centerfold was attached? Is that what he's saying? Was it a 6.0 with the centerfold attached? Because obviously it's going to affect the grade.
No, yeah. No, he's saying that. Sorry, I'm scrolling back up. He said he'd give it a 6.0 or higher, but it has a detached centerfold.
I would say at least a full point, probably a little bit more with the detached centerfold. So you're looking 4, 5, 5.
I think if it's from what I've seen, like I don't know if Ilsen you were asking me, but I've seen slabs of 7.0 that say detached centerfold.
You see, that's the beauty of this conversation. Like, we could all look at the same book, and for the most part, we'll probably be in like the 1 point grade difference, but we could all grade that book 4 different ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not saying that would be a 7.0. I'm not saying that wouldn't be a 3.0. I don't know what it looks like, but with a detached centerfold alone, could it be a 6.0 from what I've seen? Yes. Could it be a detached, if it was detached cover? No.
No.
Right, but again, like, I want to caution that there's multiple things going on. So if you're talking about Overstreet standards, you can pull out Overstreet, you can look at that and see what's allowable for a certain grade. These are, when we're talking about third-party grading companies, you're talking about private companies that can come up with their own standards, and they put it up on their website. So you cannot like assume that CGC is going to make the same call as CBCS.
No.
You got to look at their own standards, because it's not the same, as far as I can tell, as Overstreet. I mean, they might reflect each other in some ways, but there's differences. So you definitely want to look at the published standards of the company that you're planning to use.
Yes, and do research. I try to look for I'll type stuff in eBay. I'll look at sold listings. I'll try to see if I could find a label or something that matches. But yeah, I think in Overstreet, like Frank was saying, I think it's much lower for detached centerfold.
Somebody in chat said you're wrong. It won't affect the grade. You get a blue label with a quotation. Oh, maybe he was responding to something in chat. Okay. Anyways, if you want to clarify that question, let us know. Hiram said some Golden Age books have gotten 6.0s with detached covers because of the rest of the book was immaculate. Yeah, I've seen a lot of, especially in the Golden Age, I've seen some interesting grades with notations. I don't necessarily, I can't call them inconsistencies, but there's been some things where I'm like, oh, wow. And they've mostly all been Golden Age books. So, you know, if somebody has expertise there. Jared's a fan of the CBCS standards. It's on their website. CGC has theirs as well.
Yes, CBCS. I have a on my phone. I have one of those little like folders where I have all my like grading stuff that I reference, and CBCS has a good little guide there that goes over all the different standards in a summary. So that's really helpful.
Right. Okay. So, Frank, you got any issues you want to talk about with the group or any chat? You know, you guys are welcome. Let us know if you want to hop on as well. You know, we're opening the floor. This is just for the community. We're an open book.
It's just, listen, with me, it's like I'm 53. I'm going to be 53. I've been collecting since I was 12. So it's like anything else. The more books you see, obviously, the more you're going to like, you know, I can grade a book in 4 or 5 minutes. I'll know what the book is. You know, but I've seen thousands of books. So just like I said, before, like, look at the book. Don't let somebody else sell you on the book. You look at it. You tell yourself what the book is. If you're happy with it and their grade and your grade kind of line up, then it's pretty much, at that point, it's a price point, and, just go from there.
Looks like you lied to Russell. He said you told Houdat you were 43 at some point, Frank.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a compliment. You're blushing.
I just want to, Ali, I just want to jump in a little bit on what was just said there. At the start of that, someone who's just said that they spent 40 years in comics says, within 4 to 5 minutes, I can look at a book and I can really understand what this book is all about. I want to dwell on that. 4 to 5 minutes. So every time I see the, bear in mind that I'm very pro social media, the social media like insanity of a book that goes up and the first comment underneath is, that looks like it should be 2 points higher. You've only seen one picture.
You've
You
seen
haven't
one
opened
picture.
the book. You haven't seen the spine. You probably haven't seen the back of it. That notion, and I think that's part of the reason that we've got into this kind of crazy world with CGC is that, and I think Facebook is significantly worse on this than Instagram, is that you will see outside of, you know, smart groups like Making the Grade, you'll see in sort of big comic book groups, book goes up and like, oh, this came back from CGC, I'm furious. Someone immediately responds, oh, that should be at least a 7.5. You think, how on earth have you made that call from seeing one picture and a disappointed punter? So I do think there's an element of people have started. There's one thing which is like, as Frank was sort of saying earlier, of like buying the number, not the book. But there's another thing of buying the cover. Like I'm only looking at the front with a 5.5 to 9.8, and that's my book. And I bought an X-Men 1 at technical grade of 1.0 because it had a massive chunk out of the back of it. Big chunk. Like this is not a small chunk. And honestly, every time I post that book anywhere, someone's like, that must be a 4 or a 5. I'm like, no, it's not. It's got a massive hole in the back of the book. It's missing. And the chunk it was missing was like this big. But people would just perceive it, just go, that should be a higher grade. And I just think there's an element of like, do your research. Like you can learn this stuff. It's not a mystery. And like, you know, that whole thing of like, I'm not a professional grader, like, but if you're selling books professionally to make money, even if it's to fund your hobby, then you should be a professional grader.
You should know what you're talking about.
It's a craft.
Yeah, and you should do it. Like people should, like, this is like old man Sunil, but like, take some pride in it. If you're going to say my collection's amazing, like, have some pride that you can pick up a raw book and be like, you know, I sold a whole bunch of Daredevils. And I was really honest with people. They were like, oh, what's the grade? And I was like, it's a low grade book. And I'm sure like I could probably eke out reasons that this is a 4 or 5. But they were like, what grade is it? I was like, it's a 3.
Yeah, no,
it's a 3.
and that's what I was talking about earlier. I mean, on our live sales, and Frank knows this, even though it doesn't come up, but if it does come up, we deal with it. Like, listen, our dealers are selling raw books. They're probably pulling out the Overstreet book through their experience. They're grading the book. All right, you get it in. You don't agree with what they said that the book was. Listen, you're gonna get a refund. Like that's how it works. Like you can just do the return. I'm not gonna sit there and argue about what it should have been, could have been. Like if you're not happy because somebody else applied the standards to it, that's fine. Tell us where you're coming from and take your refund. But just because Frank says something's a 5.0 because he used the Overstreet standards, and then you send it off to a third party that doesn't use those standards necessarily, and it got a different grade, it doesn't necessarily mean that Frank got it wrong when he did what he did. There's other reasons why that could have been the case, but regardless, if you get something on our channel, we give you a full refund if you're not happy. I mean, that's how it works. So, but that's, be careful with that.
Absolutely. The last thing I want to have is I'm a happy customer. And listen, I don't want to sell you a book once. I want to sell you a book. You're happy with it. You come back and buy something else. Whether that's a $10 book, a $20 book, or whatever your budget is. The last thing I want is somebody to say, wow, you know what? He sold me this book and I am not happy with it. That is like, I've had customers for 10 years who will have to take a break for whatever reason. 3 years later, come back and be like, "Hey, you treated me good back then. Let me buy something else." And that's all. That's all I could do on my end.
Yeah, and I will always return to a dealer who's given a fair price and a fair estimate on the grade. Because why wouldn't you? You would always trust that more than anything. So, Ali, to your point, I buy a book from Frank. He calls it a 5. It gets shipped. It then goes to my presser. it gets shipped from my presser
Right.
to CGC. It
Right.
goes graded, and then it comes back like it's basically a different book. Like it's been
Different book.
through like a whole life journey that Disney
Mhm.
could put as a short film.
Mhm.
So like you can't guarantee something in New York,
Mm.
move it to California, move it to Florida, move it back, and it be untouched by human hands in terms of deterioration.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm more hot on, or the thing that I've been frustrated about, I had a torturous journey trying to buy Captain America 117. I literally, the one comic for some reason just gave me nightmares. First one I bought, detached centerfold. Annoying. Sold it, acknowledging the problem on eBay. Second one I bought, Color Touch. Third one I bought, loose at one staple. Honestly, by the end of this, I was like, look, I'm just going to buy a graded one. Like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to buy a graded one so I don't have any problem. But the one that came back with Color Touch, the retailer just refused to acknowledge the problem. I was like, I bought this book from you and it wasn't disclosed. And they were like, it was on you to check it. And I was like, I bought it from you at a show. The show was busy. There wasn't really time to stop and ask. And they were like, no, you know, and I've never bought from them since. And I do like, and I heard Hiram this week selling an AF-15 and just saying, if it comes back with Resto, I'll take the book back.
You have to.
And I just think that's like, it's pretty classy just to be able to say that and just be able to be like, listen, if I've made a mistake, I'll sort it out. Because, you know, being an international buyer, it's kind of terrifying, right? Because you're buying big books. And if you asked me, would I buy, given a choice, I would buy far more raws than graded books. But internationally, without being able to look at the book in the hand, and like, you know, Ali, you've always treated me very well, but like, I don't want to come back to you 10 times, 15 times a year to be like, did you know that this book has tape on the 12th page because it's a GA book that no one looked through? Like, so that bit from a grading point of view, if you're selling privately, like, do treat people with respect. Like, do, because otherwise it gets into a nightmare. And you see it all the time, little spats on Instagram, or more likely on Facebook, and like, oh, I bought this book and it turned out B, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I would encourage people to take up the craft and be respectful with it.
Yeah, no, be careful. Be careful with that. I mean, you know, not to self-plug, but I do take a lot of pride. I mean, I'm not a direct dealer in the sense of like, say, Frank, but I take a lot of pride in the fact that how many transactions have we done? And there's no one out there right now that can say that they brought up an issue with a raw book and we didn't take care of it. Like, everyone got it taken care of. Stuff happens. Every single person, there's nobody out there that can say they got burned buying something from Elite Comics 11's raw. Like, if they let us know, we took care of it. And, you know, they told us they were okay with it.
I'll vouch for that in that I've been buying from you for like, whatever it is, nearly 3 years, and I've never had a problem. The one thing I would call Ali out on is I had a problem on another sale that wasn't his. and he pinged me and he said, you do know that book you bought has got a really weird grader's note? And I was like, that's it. I totally missed it. He was like, yes, that book you've just bought has a hole in the cover that's listed on the grader's notes. And I bloody missed it in the sale. And I spent $2,000 on a book which was blue labeled, but had a hole in cover. Furious, and Ali spotted
like a punch hole, like a
not as big as a punch hole. It was, and actually, I've got to say, it was a Hulk,
maybe a pin.
It was a Hulk 181, and for the life of me, I couldn't see it. When it was in
Maybe
my hand,
some people would hang the comics with like a thumbtack or something like that.
It must have been something like that, but I honestly, for the life of me, couldn't see it. Like, shone a light through it to see if I could spot it.
There was it was on. I remember it because it was a label note issue. Like, there was a label note that I saw, and it was tiny, but I guess I'm used to, you know, just squinting and seeing things on Instagram. And I saw that, and I know where to look out of habit. So I just want to make sure I wanted to make sure you had seen that. But it brings up a good kind of, and this was your point, I think, originally, Ilson, is now especially, if we're not going to get as many like label notes as usual, there's always this 2.0, 3.0, and a slab that looks like beautiful. And like, you know, especially on like a live sale, here's a 3.0. It's so beautiful. There's people out there, they're like, oh my gosh, somebody was an idiot and like didn't grade that. And like they're drooling because like there's something that, you know, here's the thing. If you really want to evaluate a third party like graded book, you better get the notes, because I've seen plenty of 2.0s, 3.0s. They look like the grader was sleeping, the grader hated you. You get the grader notes, and nowadays there might be something detached that's not on the label. There might be a stain throughout the whole book. So like, you know, just when you guys see, especially moving forward, just public service announcement, if you see 3.0s, 4.0s that look so much better, you probably want to check out the notes.
The
Like,
notes
At that
and
point,
just
I would assume there's something going on the inside of the book. I mean, like you said, Ali, these guys they're not grading books in the dark. So if you're buying a 3.0 at a 3.0 price, expect to get a 3.0 book. I mean, yeah, you might get lucky and that one book could possibly be a 4 or 5. Good for you. But if I'm buying a 3.0 and paying a 3.0 price, I'm expecting a 3.0 book. And,
It's-
you know, whatever issues are going inside, like Ali said, check out the grader notes.
definitely, but it's even more, even, you know, the lower grades, not as much as the higher grades. If you see it, like maybe you see a book that's like a 7.5 or something, and it's like, oh man, like maybe I could press that. You gotta familiarize yourself with things like foxing and dust shadows and stuff that, you know, isn't like just a crease or a tear or something that could be pressed out. I mean, foxing essentially is like mold, you know, that's been, you know, because the book was maybe kept in like a damp basement, or dust shadowing because the book were stacked and they were exposed to light just on a certain part of the book. I have a good example here of a House of Secrets 92 I recently bought raw, and it looks like it's super nice. I'll just, the grades right there. So like looking at it, I was showing people, I took a picture of it because I was excited. They're like, oh man, that's like, looks like a 7.0, like Hillsong, like you were saying, like right off the bat. But then I said, I replied to one of them in the comments, and I was like, there's some dust shadowing, like severe dust shadowing on the back cover,
Yeah.
yep,
which brought it
Yes.
down. See this?
Yeah.
yep.
I mean, look, I love it. I think it's great. The book was like in
Colours are
someone's
great.
basement. I think the history behind, like, I'm just picturing it stacked in someone's basement with another book on top of it. And then this was exposed to just dust settling on it for who knows how long. You know what I mean? It's like perfectly angular, like right there and stuff. But in the grader's notes, it says heavy dust shadowing. And, you know, it might look like a 7 or a 7.5. The colors are great because it was on its front cover for so long. But it came back a 6, and I'm thrilled. I don't, you know, that's fine with me. I pegged it at maybe like a 6.5. Or between, because the seller I think had it around like a 5.5, so we wound up meeting in the middle there. But yeah, you got to familiarize yourself with stuff like that, because someone could see that in the front and be like, oh man, maybe that hasn't been pressed. Pressing is not going to solve everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things out there on these books like dust shadows and foxing. So many people don't know, you know, like what foxing is. It's a confusing term. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, that doesn't, you could just say molding, you know what I mean? But
yeah, I want to jump in on Ali's point about the change in the graders notes, the label notes. I give you my very quick TED talk, and then I'm going to bounce and leave other people to talk. My issue with this is multiple things. Number one, how many books do we all see traded in these fast environments of Instagram and whatnot, etc., where it's just not possible to get the graders notes? It's not possible in that instance. So it slows down the ecosystem rather than speeds it up.
Okay.
Secondly, like I'd like to really draw a question with CGC's verbiage around there's grader notes available to anyone who's a member. So I have to pay $120 every year, even if I'm not submitting, to just be able to access graders notes. Like that, to me, someone who's just gone, this is a cash cow. Like this is an opportunity to get the consumers to not even send things to Florida, waste time with our $15 an hour employee. I can just charge them to log into the website and query a database. the cost of running that database is minimal, especially if the vast majority of the checkups you're doing are 9.6s and 9.8s. And there's no notes anyway, 9.4s with no notes. Like, for me, I just think it's an opportunity. It's not listening to the way the community trades. It's encouraging people to sign up for membership. And when they've locked you in, then you're more likely to submit with them than CBCS because you've already paid your membership. And I think, and this is a little bit of conspiracy theory, and Ali has no part in this, but there's a little bit of like, where does that pressure come from? The prominent members of the community. Now, for me, that's got to be the auction houses.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you're speculating at that point. I mean, I think what you're saying makes sense. I mean, in terms of, I can see why. Yeah, I know where you're heading. I mean, it's a little off topic. It's not conspiracy or a theory talk. I mean, that's not what we're doing here. I think this. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm an entrepreneur. I run a business. I have my own policies. People won't necessarily agree with all of them, but you have a choice in the marketplace. So it's a private company. They changed their policy. We can protest it by, making different choices when we send things for grading, or we can give them feedback, whatever. But there's always a counterpoint, Sunil. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're saying, look, if you send your book for grading, you're gonna have the grader's notes. So you're talking about a third party that wants to pull notes on a book that they didn't submit, and you want them, to be able to get that without a membership. I mean, me personally, I would like it better if you could still pay for grader notes. Like, if I'm a third party and I want grader notes on that book, let me pay for that particular set of grader notes. I'm personally not a fan of how that's not an option, but that's them running their business. They made that decision, so we got to just share the information, and people can speak out and say how they feel about it. I mean, I don't know what CGC, why they did it. I have my theories. You have your theories, but I just want to be careful about speculating why they made decisions they made, because we don't know that. We think we know, maybe.
No, yes, yeah. So my speculation is not necessarily what motivated them, because I couldn't tell you what factor motivated them the highest, but I'm talking about potential upside for them. And I agree with you, that there is, as a private company, they get to do roughly what they want. My challenge really is they have a huge place in a community, and that has a knock-on effect to a community. So, my feedback is relatively worthless because I'm not a paying member. I don't intend to be a paying member, and don't intend to submit until I see a reduction in turnaround times. And maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe it does happen. I don't know. But like, for me as a private collector who doesn't need it to resell books, like, for me, I feel like they are inundated at the moment, and like, I cheer them on, because that's great that any business is doing really well, especially in the current climate. It's good that there are people employed, and it's good that there's money being made. But for me, there was an opportunity there to actually make those notes free. There was an opportunity to go, actually, we can, not necessarily follow CBCS, but we can create a new industry standard, which gives buyers the opportunity to find out a little bit more, and sort of returning to the theme of tonight of grading, and those graders notes, just making them more available and making information more available is the thing that I'm.
Let me ask you this one question, Sunil. Let me ask you this, just a hypothetical question. 2 books, same grade, 2.0s, right? One, no grader notes on each book, both blue label. One looks beat up, a 2.0 that's beat up. The other one looks like a 4 to a 5, but it has a detached, whatever it is, detached cover or whatever. Which book would you rather have? The better looking book, both the same grade though, both 2.0s. One eye appeal, one looks so much better than the other.
So I've had this scenario a lot of times in building my Superman run. And actually, like, I do have a bit of a bugbear about a detached cover or a detached centerfold. Like, that for me gets into a detached centerfold. For me, they're both sort of killer, because I just, in the back of my mind, I'll always be thinking, is this married? Is this actually not the centerfold from the book? And like, it will always have a little nag in my head of like, did somebody, especially on the Golden Age books, did somebody piece this back
So
together?
you'd rather have, I mean, I totally respect it. I mean, everybody's going to have their own criteria, their own opinion. So in that scenario, you'd rather have the book that's totally attached, just looks eye appeal, just looks, you know, looks like a 2.0 all day, but the other one looks better. You'd rather have that 2.0 that's attached, and I understand.
Yeah, I would have an attached 2.0 versus a detached, potentially 3.0 or 4.0 looking, because ultimately I think I'm fooling myself, which is part of the reason I don't buy green books or purple books, that there's always that element of like, am I kidding myself that this book is actually better than it is?
I want to throw something out there to the group too. It's just kind of like, again, just a theoretical like talking point. So if we're talking about the CGC kind of shift in policy, I mean, the type of notes that used to be on there, it's like detachments, it's some, you know, spine things. There's a long list of things they used to put label notes on, and now they're not going to do that anymore. I mean, so even if the label notes aren't on the slab, whatever was wrong with the book, in theory, I mean, it was accounted for when they put the grade on the slab. Like, what is the magic line? I mean, they previously had drawn a line where they were going to, like, list this, list this, list this. They obviously don't list every defect that's wrong with a book on the label. They never have.
Right.
So they decided they're not going to list these ones that they used to like list. I understand that had become something expected, but what's the magic in those specific defects that makes this such a controversial issue? I mean, is it because most of the defects on that list were kind of, they touched on the structure of the book? Is that, you know, whether or not everything was detached, or whether the you know, staples were there, that kind of stuff? Is that why it's?
I think they kind of, since they've always done it, they kind of set this standard that these are the things that, you know, you should look out for, or these are the bigger defects that we're going to notate. And I think along the lines, people have gotten to the point where if they want to get something like Ilsung was saying, I have a thing against like detached covers and stuff like that. I know people, you know, I think they've become accustomed to wanting to get a book that doesn't have maybe those defects, because if they share them, maybe they don't want to show that it has a detached cover, it has that label notation. Because you know, we've seen plenty of times where people want to buy big books and want to say they want a clean label, you know. So I think if maybe CGC had never started listing those to begin with, this wouldn't be ingrained in people's collectors' minds this whole time, that these are the defects that are bigger that collectors may want to know about before they purchase. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. We got some really good input, but with the people in the chat, by the way. So there seems to be a lot of people that are rightfully like focused on losing the label notes about defects that you can't see. So it's in the slab, you can't see it. Like the detached centerfold, you can't see it. So that makes sense to me. I could see
puzzles being filled out, stuff like that. Like I know there's some that have like you know, things inside of it that would annoy me. But
would it go as far as the because I suppose the big one is the Marvel value stamp?
No, I don't.
No.
I don't, because that could be. I mean, that would be a green label, but I think you could still get a blue 1.5. You can still get a 1.5 blue. I've seen 1.5 blue with the notation, so I don't know now. Like, you're right.
People always say like you're gonna get a green label. You're not gonna get they're gonna, if you don't say anything, they're probably gonna assume you like want a green label, but you can still insist on a blue label. Like you can insist on a blue label. You're gonna take a hit for that, but you don't automatically, you know, necessarily get a green label if you put in a 181 with no Marvel value stamp.
But I think what Ilson is saying though now is if you opt for that blue label with the lower grade with a missing stamp, is that note's not going to be there. So that can be like, you would have to do the research. What it's coming down to is you as the buyer need to do the research now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They published a list. They published a list when they announced this of like the things that they're not going to list anymore. Sitting here right now, I don't know if that would specifically be, that's one
I
of
don't
the
know
things
either.
they listed.
Yeah,
So I don't want to speculate about that.
Me
No,
either.
I think it was more just on the word like incomplete. Like, but to your
Right.
point, making the grade, it's like if you see a Hulk 181 or 1.5 blue label, you should probably ask a few questions,
Uh-huh.
regardless of what
Yeah.
it says on the logo. You should probably be like, there's a problem with this book.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's like it's putting a little more. You got to put your big boy pants on and do a little more research for yourself, because that's just the way it is. Like Ali said, that's the decision they made, and that's the way it's going to be. It's like if I get into an accident at work, it's like, why'd you get into an accident? They're going to want to know, were you doing everything you were supposed to do? Oh, well, I bought this book. Well, did you look it up? Did you do the research? It kind of falls under that. That's
Yeah.
kind of the ending argument. I know what everyone's frustrations are. I get it. But
Yeah.
at the end, the stuff will be there for you to look into.
Yeah, I just think it's very, very hard in the fast-moving environment.
I agree.
Like at a show, hopefully the Wi-Fi is good enough that you
I
can
agree.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like, Frank, if you're set up at show and every customer wants to take a book
Wants
off the
to
shelf,
look- right.
write down 13 numbers, look it
Right.
up.
So I was talking to Frank about this in theory. I'm like, I was like, oh, well, suppose like, you want to be like, oh, well, this book, this slab actually has like a detached whatever, but it's not on the label. Okay. So like, where does it stop though? It's like, oh, is he supposed to tell you it has like a blunted left corner and right corner? It has a centerfold, like it has a subscription crease. It has a stain on the back. Like, you're not going to get all the info unless you get the grader notes, and you're still not going to get all the info until you get that plus a book in your hand, and you still might not get all the info until you actually crack this book. So my question to you is like, do these developments just kind of put more of, a value, an informational value of like, just buying raw books?
What are you saying, Ali? You're saying more people.
I'm
Were you
just
asking
saying, like,
Frank,
if you really want to understand, if people are really just trying to understand the book that's inside the slab,
Right.
why would you even
I love
buy?
buying raw books. Yeah, no, I get it.
Why would
I
you
love
even buy a slab in the first place? Like buying a slab, you are essentially buying that number in the
I think
slab.
I think some of it comes down to trust. I think some of it comes down to confidence in like if you buy a raw book, like if you're out, like how good are your own skills at looking at it and knowing and being confident that you're paying the right amount. You know what I mean? So I think along with it is people need to become maybe a little more confident, and if they don't like the way things are going, yeah, you should buy raw books, and then but you gotta find someone you trust and maybe see it in person. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
gonna
Pete
come down to
Monster, Pete Monster, I see your comment. My understanding is, so you definitely used to be able to just pick a book, put in the serial number. You could buy the grader notes on a desktop. I think part of their policy change is now you have to be a member to get grader's notes. You get them for free if you're a member now, or with your membership, I should say, but you can't. I don't think you can you can no longer just buy books for a particular book without buy grader notes for a particular book without actually being a member. So they made it free, but you have to be a member now. So it's not really free; it's part of the membership.
I had to get the grader notes on a PGX Avengers 4. You email an AOL address, and then 2 weeks later, someone replies whether they got the grader notes or not.
Here we go, little son. Here we go.
Manually. That is a hell of a job. A manual response. Sorry, we don't have the grader notes on that one.
People are like, you should start a grading company. I'm like,
God,
no.
I almost Venmoed that guy $5 to say thank you for checking it out. Right, gentlemen, it's 10 minutes past midnight in the UK, and I've probably wanged on, and I've risked Ali's conspiracy theory radar. So I will bid you all good night. Enjoy
right,
the rest
my
of the show, my friends.
take care, man.
All
Good
right.
night, Sunil.
Appreciate you. All right. So, Jared, I think you said you wanted to hop on. You still interested? Let us know if anyone else in chat wants to hop on here. Let us know in the chat, and we will get you on here. Definitely want to encourage people coming on and giving us their perspective.
Things I see a lot just from in the grading group, a lot of questions I see, and it could be tough, is if everything else is perfect, but it just has this one thing, you know, assuming it's a 9.8, but it has this one issue, and that's just tough. Because it really depends. One thing we didn't bring up is I always have a ruler. So because a lot of the defects, like if you have a perfect book, if you have something that you think is a 9.8, but you have a crease on it, well, how long is it? You know what I mean? How long is the spine split? How long is the spine? How many spine ticks, you know, do you have? Because that all stuff takes into play. I know like measurements is a huge thing. Like if you have a 6-inch crease, if you have a 2-inch crease, if you have a 1-inch tear as opposed to a 1/4-inch tear, staining as well. So it's definitely important to have a little ruler, have a penny, have a quarter, something that you could kind of compare it to, and then if you can, submit it, and then you'll have your answer, and then take notes like Evan was saying in the comments before.
What's
up, man?
What's up, Jared? How are you, man?
Good to see you guys. Frank,
welcome to Chatterbox.
Hey, Jared.
Man.
How you doing, buddy?
Thanks for having me. I was going to chime in
go
quickly
ahead.
about, you mentioned the Overstreet guide, and I think that's what I really learned on. You know, they have that, like, I don't know, 50-page thing or something. I have found that I think it's a little more conservative than CGC. So, like, if you come up with, like, a 7.0, you might get, like, a 7.5 or something like that from CGC. But for me, like, if I'm buying a book and I buy it at the grade of the Overstreet, then I'm getting a good price for it because I'm calling it a 6.0, it might be better. And if I sell it based on Overstreet, you're going to get it and be happy with it because it's going to be probably better than the grade. And I'm pleasantly surprised at CGC a lot. So I definitely recommend that. The other thing I did a lot of when I was first learning is if like you go on mycomicshop.com, they have all these beautiful, gigantic pictures of graded books that you can look at and just study, you know, and go get a book that's kind of common, look at a bunch of 8.0s and just look to see like what are the flaws you're seeing. And those two things together really help me to, you know, I feel pretty comfortable with grading, and I'm usually pretty spot on when I submit stuff.
Go ahead, Greg.
So I was saying you just got to kind of dive into it and then kind of build your confidence, right?
Totally agree. Yeah.
Because then, you know, you're not going to be 100% right all the time. No one expects you to be, but if you're close enough, and you'll start to see the same things over and over. You're always going to come across stuff though. That's the interesting thing about it to me is there's always going to be something new, you know? Yeah. I'm still learning, you know what I mean?
And that's what I'll do too. Like if I hop on like a collector stash, if there's a book like a lot of tanning or something, I won't even try to grade. I might be like, structurally, it looks like a 4.0, but there's a lot of tanning. So, you know, I think people just need to not be afraid to say that and to describe what they're seeing. And no one's going to get mad at you if you say it's structurally a 4.0. I don't know what to call it because of all the tanning.
Right.
Yeah.
What's there to get mad about?
It is tough though. You know, last thing you want to know is be like, oh, you know, have a reputation where you're not, you know, it's just, like you said, like I said, it takes confidence because it can be out of your comfort zone at first, you know? And that's another reason on Facebook why, you know, I started it so people could, I know there's definitely people that are looking at the comment sections and are learning from it, and that may not be comfortable enough asking questions yet and stuff like that. Because I remember when I first posted stuff on the CGC board, someone like totally was like, I can't even grade this with this kind of a picture, like, you know what I mean? And I was like, whoa, better, you know, take better pictures next time, you know? The internet could be a scary place when it comes to that.
Somebody in chat was asking, how much does trimming affect the grade? Trimming takes your book and puts it into another category of a restored book. So that's a
one
whole
thing I wanted to
category.
Bring up about trimming is it's definitely important to have a ruler and to know this, you know, the standard sizes of some of the different ages. But I've definitely seen a lot of people will post a book and the cut is just off. Like, you know, like X-Men 266 First Gambit is notoriously poorly cut. Like the top part of it, I have it over there somewhere, where it says uncanny will be like cut off. And I've seen people post it like, oh no, do you think this is trim? Because look how the letters are cut off, they're a little diagonal. Not every book is cut the same. You know what I mean? These books are printed and cut, you know, quickly, and you know, they're manufactured. You know what I mean? So something that looks like the comic code might be cut off a little bit at the top or at the side. You know, at Fantastic Four 12, a lot of the times the comic code is towards the edge of the book, and you'll see that cut off, and it'll look like it's trimmed, but it's just the way that specific book was cut. But it is important to have a ruler and to measure, and not every time do you put a book up against another book is it going to completely match.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
rambling, I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, look, I mean, for the most part, I would hope that most dealers and people out there are reputable. But there are people out there that are buying restored books, knowingly buying restored books, graded restored books, cracking them, and then trying to bring them out to the public and saying, hey, you know what, this was my dad's book from 50 years ago. And the book, like, you know, if you don't really know what you're looking at, you think you're buying, wow, this kid had a book 50 years ago. There's nothing been done to it. Meanwhile, there's this, that, and you know, 10 other things been done to it. So, I mean, I'm personally aware of that. I've actually dealt with a person who tried doing that to me. So just buyer beware. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like, nobody wants to feel, hey, I got taken advantage of. I paid $2,000 for a book that's restored, and it's a, you know, it's a piece of crap, whatever it is. So just buyer beware. When you're buying these big books, man, just know what, you know, just really know who you're dealing with as far as the dealer. You know, trust in that dealer. If you don't trust in them, then I would, you know, just be careful with that.
Yeah, I would say, like, when you see, like, a huge raw book from a dealer that knows their stuff, like, the first question you always ask is, like, why didn't they get it graded? So in that situation, I'm not saying, there's some dealers that make a business decision to, like, just not send big books out for grading. But as a consumer, if you're going to be buying books like that, like, from a dealer that, like, knows their stuff, I mean, my advice would be make sure that it's a dealer that you feel is going to do the right thing if there's a problem with it. I would not be buying big raw books from people and assuming that, like, they just don't know what they're doing. All right? Like, you don't accidentally get a Hulk 1 raw. I mean, I guess you could, but that's a fable. That really doesn't happen anymore. I mean, some people, you know, whatever. I don't want to hear about the exceptions, but just in practice, if you're buying big raw books, make sure that you got recourse, you guys. Make sure that you're dealing with people that have a reputation to lose.
Right.
And it's like poker, you know, they say don't sit at a table you can't afford to lose. I mean, if buying a $500 book turns out to be a bad book and that's going to, like, wreck you, and that's your collecting, you know, budget for the entire year, don't do it, right? But, you know, just think about that, because it happens.
Gerard, but you missed it. You need to have your freaking blue light. We covered that, man. That's a really good point. Yep. You need it for color touch out in the wild.
There's good guides on the internet too for detecting trimming and stuff like that. So it's always good to know that stuff ahead of time. That the books kind of come to, like, if you look at the edges, they kind of come. They're not often. I'm not talking about the square bound books really, but like a standard book doesn't come to, like, a flat, because when it's trimmed, it's usually like a 1/8. You know, like it's really small.
Small.
But you'll see that it would normally a book kind of, the pages when they fold up, they kind of come to like a point. Cover overlaps maybe a little bit. And if you see something where everything's just completely even, and it looks off and looks a little too perfect, then, you know, just be smart a little bit. But if something feels off and looks off, it might be, you know.
But it's hard because, like you said, some books are just cut like crap to begin with. So
yeah, that too. It's trimming is real tough. I've never sent a book in that has come back trimmed or anything like that, but that's something I don't know if I've ever come across and bought a trim book. I don't believe I have. Maybe there's one sitting in my collection that I'm not aware of. But
the other thing I was going to say about that really helped me learn is I like CBCS has, like, a really nice guide for their grading, and it gets you to a range, and then within that range it has look for this, and I think that's a big thing. And that was something that I don't know that I grasped from the Overstreet, because you start looking at all those details And then if you go back and read the beginning, because I have all the examples, it's like, take a look at the overall book. And so like, this is one of the, I think it's a good example of that. It's like, you know, if you hold a book back and you can see like one major defect, then you're going to be maybe like in the fine range. And if you can see this book, it's got like a dog ear right there. So, you know, I look at this and I go like, that's probably at least, you know, maybe a 6 range, right? And then it's got some spines, like kind of a little bit, a couple, like not super gnarly, but like little spine ticks, and it's dirty. So it's like, okay, now I'm taken down to a 5. You can kind of get close to like what that looks like. So there's nothing egregious about this book that makes you go, oh, that's ugly. But you start, things kind of start adding up. So if you go to that mentality of my first guess is fine, and then am I going to go up or down from a 6, that's gets you pretty close. So
yeah, when I sell raw books, I usually say it's a range, and I try to say I could see it going 0.5 either way, but I'm comfortable with this. You know what I mean?
Yep, totally agree.
So somebody said, should I get the Overstreet guide? I mean, the reason why I have this is like, this is a really old one. I brought this here with me because when I first got back into this is 2016, 2017. You know, I asked around, hey, what are some good resources? So they said, you know, buy this. And I was like, who cares about this? Like, it's all about eBay sales now. Like,
right.
So then anyways, no, really, if you are really new at this, there is a lot of value in the Overstreet guide. It helps you identify key books for like pretty much every book that's ever come out, and it has the grading standards in there. It's a good buy if you're like just fresh into this. You really just want to you want to do the research. You'll learn a lot by picking up one of those.
I love reading in that the vendors, the big sellers, and what they notice, the trends for that year and stuff like that. They have that in the beginning. That's really helpful because they're the ones that are, you know, at these shows and seeing the trends firsthand. You know, we see as much as we can on eBay, and you know, now on your page, it's like a whole new category. You know, I'm sure you're gonna be featured in there, seeing what you've noticed, maybe, right? That would be cool.
I mean, I read enough. I read enough practicing law. I like talking and watching movies better than writing. So somebody was saying, yes, this is a. Trust me, the contents of this is better than this cover. Okay, don't judge the book by its cover, right? This freaking guy over here.
There's also the detailed grading guide too. You have that?
Oh, you actually have the grading guide? Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Thing. That's gotta be. That's what the professor picks up. All right, Jared, show us that. You got it.
All right, let me go grab it real quick. I think I know exactly where it is.
You got it. You got it in the woods. All right. You got Moonshine and the Overstreet grading guide.
So we always call the Overstreet grading guide the Bible, and I still think it comes out twice a year, right? Doesn't it come out the beginning of the year and then mid-year? Don't they put out 2 copies a year? I think they still do that.
I don't know. I thought it was 1, but I could be wrong. I have the last year one. I don't have the newer one.
So what do they keep putting out? I mean, it's the same. It's the same. Do they change the standards?
I thought it was yearly.
No, it's just maybe some of the prices go up. They go. I mean, listen, it's a fluctuating market. Prices go up, prices go down, but that's
also there's prices in this other publication also. Like I thought it was just the grading. It's just focused on grading.
You could still order too the owl cards. I don't know if I think they might be outdated, but they're what you could hold up to the pages and see the page quality and the color.
Rev's Mark is saying that the grade Overstreet grading guide was updated in 2021.
Okay, so mine's the older version, but so it's nice. It kind of has, you know, like so it says fine, for example, right? Here's what that book kind of should look like. And again, I think I didn't put enough emphasis on this, but it just looks like a nice book, right? You don't see any major issues, and then you can kind of look at, you know, like again, this is not CGC doesn't necessarily use this, so don't expect for CBCS to kind of get exactly right, but look at you close. Yeah, so there's a lot of great information in here, and then there's a lot of pictures for different ones, and then it'll show you, you know, like there's a 6.0, there's a dust shadow, and like what the issues are. So it's good. It's just absorbent. I thought it was fun to learn the grade. So
of course,
but
and it's good to have picture
examples.
examples.
Like, you know, I was a plumber 100 years ago. right? I could learn so much in a classroom. A teacher could tell me how to fix it,
For sure.
a drain line, a trap, a water line, blah, 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 all this stuff. Once I got into the real world and really started practicing, I realized I didn't know anything. So
Yeah,
my
sure.
point is, look, you could read all those books, you could study, blah, blah, blah. Go to shows, look at
Yeah,
books,
totally agree.
go to comic shows, look at raw books, look at graded books, see how these books present. To me, it's
Totally
like
agree.
the more books you're gonna look at, the better your eye's gonna tell you, like, look, that to me looks like a 4.0. That to me looks like a 7.0. It just, practice makes perfect, right? The more you do
For
it,
sure.
the better you're gonna get at it. So
And take the time to grade your book before you go to CGC and see how well you did. Like that's a great,
Yeah.
great learning experience, right? And
Yep.
All right, time flies. We somehow have been talking for wow, like almost an hour and a half, you guys.
I could talk like all day.
So I
about that.
I want to I don't want to be accused of just letting certain people on or whatever. Is there anyone in chat? Either ask a question through the chat or let us know if you want to hop on. You have something positive to or just informative, I should say, to add to the chat. Let us know, or just ask us in these last few minutes any questions, or any of you guys on the screen, any other issues you think we should cover.
There was I had bought a couple raw books, and I came across this year that I had come across an issue that I found was interesting. I put it up on the page, and some people seem to kind of have seen it before. Some sellers I know had seen it before, but I think it's important to say here if people are listening. I don't know if you guys have seen. One was a Silver Age and one was a Bronze Age book, and there were 4 staples. So you'd think that 2 must be added after manufacturing, but they all looked the same. They were there was 2 on the inside, 2 on the outside. So they didn't look like new staples. They were all matching. Not that had settled my mind or anything. So I did some research and found out that during this time, some books were printed. They printed a certain number of books extra that they put to the side before they put the covers on, in case they weren't able to complete the print run. So if people ordered more and they needed more copies, what they would do was they would take those books that were printed with just the interior without the covers, and then they would manually staple on the cover to complete the print run for that book, because they had not, filled it initially. So if you ever come across, it's a little confusing. It was confusing to me, but if you ever come across a book and you see 2 staples on the inside and 2 staples on the outside and the cover's attached, don't just assume that it's restored or those staples were added after manufacturing. If you just do a little research, you could, I sent one to CGC and it came back blue label, no restoration, nothing like that. So that was kind of my case study. So definitely, if you come across something weird, do some research, because not everything you see is worst case scenario. These are books that were printed a long time ago. Manufacturing was different back then. I don't think that's something that goes on today anymore, but that's an interesting fact that I wanted to share on here today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, there's, especially in the further back you go, like Golden Age, on this book, we're only going to use 1 staple, just because we ran out.
Yeah, some of the books in the 40s were printed when they were metal drives, 1 staple right in the middle. So if you see that, it's nothing weird necessarily. And then some of them actually will have odd number of pages, and it'll look like someone took a razor and cut super smoothly, like that, 1/8 of an inch, you'll see, but that's just how they're made. There's an odd number of pages. It's half of a centerfold. They cut it in half, so it ends up being like 50 pages as opposed to 52. So you do see that sometimes. So do your research. Don't freak out on the seller necessarily. Or if it's in that range.
Gio, I have a question about new collectors, so they won't get fooled in buying comics that are restored. Okay, you gonna tell us this question? do you want to come on and ask us, or are you gonna just tell us in chat? Wait times. People are talking about wait times. Look, the companies, they're trying to process as much as they can. I'm sure they have their own business management issues they got to work through. I will say though, a lot of the people complaining about wait times undervalue their books. All right. So, just keep in mind that whatever value you put on your books, it's gonna play a role in how quick it comes back. All right. So if you want to skimp on that end, don't be surprised if it takes longer than you might like. But yeah, they generally are. They definitely are backlogged. I think it's safe to say pretty much every grading, at least the big two grading companies, it's taken longer now than it used to. That's for sure.
I found the fast turnarounds to be pretty accurate, but anything above like the, third expensive option is crapshoot.
Yeah, I sent a few express, and they came back pretty quickly. I think it was like eight days or something like that. But it's pricey.
Yep, same thing. Yep.
So that, the books were bigger books, so I wanted them back.
So Mortal Comics is asking, why would the value change the wait time? So if I have a Turtles 1 first print, that's a bad example because it's a magazine. But if I have, an ASM 300, and I'm gonna say, it's worth $200, but it actually is a 9.6 or 9.8, like I'm gonna get knocked into something that's not walkthrough. And then it's going to not come back walkthrough. So it's just going to take longer. So there's different value tiers depending on where you assign your book. Strategically, if you want a book back and it's a really valuable book, it needs to be in walkthrough. If it's in walkthrough, that's like the fastest tier. And then it's downhill from there. But it's all kind of pegged to the grades you assign. I strategically on my own books, I have overstated values on my own books just because I wanted them back for some reason, like really quickly. So I've actually done that. I'm not expecting people to do that, but definitely be aware that your value is going to play a role in how quickly they come back.
Well, you could also do Fast Track, which right now the turnaround times between Fast Track Modern and Fast Track Regular. Fast Track Modern, I think right now is 30 working days, and if you submit it just modern, you're going to be waiting 8-9 months at least. So sometimes it's worth paying that extra $10-12, whatever it is.
I actually think it's somewhat of a good thing. I think people need to reconsider sometimes what they're submitting it. If it's for value, you could sell a book raw for $75. You get it graded, and it's a $100 book. Is it really worth? So I think it's been a good time for me to pause, kind of and reflect too on what am I sending in. Is it worth waiting? Is it worth, the extra amount of money? So,
has anybody gotten? Here's a question: has anybody gotten magazine grading done at CBCS yet? Has anyone gotten those back? Have you seen any of the slabs for magazine size stuff? Did they start that already?
No, I haven't. I
think they started
anything.
But I haven't seen them.
I think they did, but I haven't submitted anything.
Yeah.
No, I haven't used CBCS, Ollie.
As a Turtles fan, I'm always, I definitely got my attention because right now you can only currently grade magazine size at CGC. And the magazine slabs, I'm hoping they improve those. They're not my favorite. So I was interested in hearing about CBCS magazine slabs. Let's see, looking at these, I submitted a book, okay. Yeah, if you request the press, that takes even longer. That makes sense.
Yeah, if you could find a local presser to wherever you live, it saves so much time if you're submitting.
And again, that's also something I think about too. Like if you press a book that's some Bronze Age X-Men that's like a 7.0, and you're going to press it into an 8.0, again, what's the value difference in doing that, right? Maybe it's worth an extra $20. Is it worth the time and effort to press? So I've been trying to really think a lot more about is it really worth, the time and effort to do things like that? Because I find myself sometimes sending stuff off and then thinking it's probably not worth the extra weight, the extra expense, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have a WrestleMania program, when Ultimate Warrior took on Hulk in Canada. I sent that magazine size to CGC, and it's been there since November of last year. So but it's just for me. I'm not going to sell it. It's just going to stay
Mhm.
here. So, I mean, you know, I didn't overstate the value, but it's going to take, I mean, that's a long time.
I'm in the same boat. I have no idea how long it's going to take. I'm just not thinking about it.
Right, right. Okay, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys
Thanks
hopping
for having me
on and the chat.
Oh, this was
You guys
fun.
are
Awesome,
great.
There's so
man.
much. There's so much you could delve into. So maybe we could do it again sometime.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought that there would be like, you know, a ton more controversy and people up in arms, but it's been a humane, informative discussion. A lot of class as always. You guys, appreciate you guys taking on this topic. You guys have any questions on grading? I think Frank's Comics is a great resource. You guys know Jared. He's there. And of course, go join Making the Grade Comics on Facebook. That's Greg's group. They
Yeah, go check it out.
Yeah, go check it out. It's awesome.
And look through, just even if you want to, you know, join and look through the, you know, you don't have to, you're not forced to post anything. You could just look through, scroll through the feeds and see what people have been talking about. And there's always good topics in there. If you're interested in grading, you could learn a lot.
Yep. All right, guys. Until next time. Thank you, guys.
Take care, guys.
Appreciate everyone.
Hey,
Yeah,
thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Ellie.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. See you.